I saw this really interesting post by the race. This is a joke from FOM. Quote, Ferrari isn't happy. And it's not just because of both cars were disqualified from the Chinese GP, but because F1 use of radio message while it was swapping Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Listen, F1 and the media has been doing this to Lewis for years. They don't play the full radio. They take areas of the radio and play it so it's out of context. They've done this to Lewis for years. They've treated him like he's always angry on the radio or he's always complaining. There's a full conversation going on the radio, and what the average person hears is probably 1 to 2%, probably less. Mercedes never called it out. McLaren never called it out. This is Lewis Hamilton's second race in Ferrari, and Ferrari is calling it out. It's never happened to Ferrari before. But now, wherever Lewis goes, the drama goes with him. And thank God Ferrari is calling this bullshit out. And this is why I made my most recent video. It's like I said, the media, F1 media, they do have a huge racial bias. And then there are people who deny this. They say Lewis is too famous. He has too many fans. He doesn't experience racism. It's impossible for him to get racial bias against him because he has too much fans. He's beloved by too many. Yeah, there's no doubt Lewis is beloved by many, many sensible people, but there's also a lot of hypocrites, a lot of racists in this sport. And racists don't always just go out in their white hoodies and white capes. Sometimes they just walk outside like normal people. So if you can't tell, perhaps it's because you haven't experienced it. But Lewis has experienced this for years, and Lewis fan base, us, we've watched this happen to him for years, and we've spoken about it. We've tried to bring awareness to it, and basically everyone just ignored us, acted as if, nah, he's not experiencing none of that in Formula One. Well, thank God Ferrari is calling out the bullshit. Thank God Ferrari is calling out the bullshit. I got to appreciate it, to the race for writing this article, because I guarantee you there's not going to be a lot of other media personnel who are writing this article based on the truth. Ferrari has branded Formula One use of the radio as a joke and a deliberate attempt to stir up drama over how it swapped Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc position in the Chinese GP. So let me give you a bit of backstory. Lewis did not have the race pace. He wasn't going fast enough to keep up fully or to catch up. He could keep up with George, but he couldn't catch George. And Charles was just behind Lewis in the DRS. So Lewis got the idea and basically said, I'm going to swap with Charles because I'm slow at the moment. Good for Lewis. That's a man with integrity. And he did the same thing, I believe it was last year in the Japanese Grand Prix. I believe it was last year. It's either last year, 24 or 23, where he swapped position with Russell. Because again, it is rare for Lewis to be slower than his teammates in the race, in race trim. So slow that he says, you know what, for the sake of the team, to be a team player, let's swap position. Let's put the other guy in front. Let's put Russell in front. Today he said, let's put Charles in front because Charles is faster. He's right behind me. Let's try to get the best position, the best results for the team. That's the kind of guy Lewis is. Can you ever imagine it? Has there been any other F1 driver who does that? Is there any other F1 driver who does that? No. No, there isn't. Max will never do that. He could have done it. He could have helped out Checo in the Brazil Grand Prix a few years ago. The man said, no, fam. Are you crazy? I didn't come here to help people. And he's right. He didn't come here to help people. He doesn't have to. Really and truly, they say this is a team sport. But let's be honest. It's a team sport, but it's really a selfish sport. If you're a driver, you want to win championships, you want to beat the other guy, your first guy you have to beat is your teammate. You have to be a little bit selfish. You're raised, you're trained to be a little bit selfish, to be very selfish, actually. So for Lewis to be conscious enough to have the integrity to say, actually, I'm not fast at the moment. It takes a lot for a driver to admit that. Some drivers would never admit that. Lewis can. He's admitted, at the moment, I'm not fast enough. Let's put Charles in front. Good for Lewis. Good for Lewis. From fuck their haters. And fuck Formula One as well. Fuck FOM. Because they're hypocrites. Absolutely hypocrites. And they will twist the narrative. They will play the radio out of sync. They will play it out of context. All to mislead the public and to give the media something to write about. So that they can farm using Lewis Hamilton's name. They love to farm his name. They love to put his name in every fucking article that you can find specifically to get as much click as possible. But they don't do it with good grace. They don't do it with good intentions. They do it by lying. And I'll prove it to you because I was literally talking about this in another video. So I'll bring this back up. This is what the Mail posts. This is a British outlet, by the way. I don't see the British bias, by the way. I don't see it. This sport has a lot of British influence, and the way they go against Lewis, I don't see the British bias. Look at what they wrote. Lewis Hamilton clashes with Ferrari engineer and is made to swap place with Charles Leclerc in miserable Chinese GP. Clashes. He didn't clash with his race engineer. He didn't clash with his race engineer. Another huge lie. There was no clash. But you know, since the Australian GP, since Martin Brundle, yeah, Brundle, you know, another guy who lacks integrity, lacking integrity is a great way to get into journalism. Lacking awareness or morality is a great way to get into journalists. And the way Martin was saying Lewis was angsty with his race engineer. Why does he have to be so angsty with his race engineer? Crazy. That's just a normal thing in Formula One. You know, you're talking to someone, you're in a difficult race. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's not, but it's tricky conditions. It's tricky conditions, so you can't expect the drivers just to remain calm at all time. You look at what footballers have to do. You think they're calm all the time? This is a sport at the end of the day. They have to perform, and they're under immense stress. So you know, perhaps Martin has never been in a position to win a damn thing in his life, so he wouldn't really understand what it really takes to be under all that pressure. But these discussions are nothing new. We hear these with drivers and their and their engineers quite often, and we hear significantly worse. And like Lewis says, they don't write about that. They don't write about it. We've heard significantly worse behavior from other drivers, most notably Max Verstappen, most notably. Proof is out there, and they cannot deny it. You know, they try to deny it, they try to deflect, but really and truly, it doesn't work. It doesn't last long. That conversation, that argument doesn't hold any validity. It really doesn't. But thank goodness Ferrari's calling it out. And look how quickly they had to call it out as well. Immediately they notice that something isn't right. The way the media and Formula One treats Lewis Hamilton, it is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. There's a huge bias, and I've said it's a racial bias because I don't see them treating any other drivers like this. And he's the only black man on the grid. And why do they like to paint this black man and he's angry all the time? Because that's a huge stereotype in the black community against black people, against black men, that we're angry all the fucking time, as if we're not allowed to get angry. So it's ridiculous, really. But Ferrari noticed it immediately, how the media and FOM and Formula One is treating Lewis Hamilton differently. And thank goodness that they had to call it out in the second fucking race immediately. Immediately. Wow. So thanks for Ferrari for calling this out. Let's continue with the article. Hamilton was struggling for much of the Shanghai race and under pressure from Leclerc in the first stint and the start of the second, despite Leclerc damaging his front wing on the first lap, ironically by hitting Hamilton through the first sequence of corner. An early pit stop initially bought Hamilton some recite, but Leclerc quickly caught him after his own stop, aided by traffic, which prompted Hamilton to radio, "I think I'm going to let Charles go because I'm struggling." That's exactly what Lewis said. Those were his exact words. The media knows. The media knows. Yet they don't report this. They don't use this. They twist the narrative. They twist it. They lie. I'll show you what they asked Fred. I will show you what they asked Fred. As you know, Fred is the team principal. After the race, this is what they asked Fred. I will show you because it was hypocritical, and the way they organize their question, it is like a poison arrow. You know, it's a poison chalice. You know, it's a double-edged sword. Whether or not you win, you also die. So this is the question they painted to Fred. This is what the media personnel asked him. They said you had to tell the drivers to swap and he wasn't too happy. Lewis, have you had words with him? That's bullshit. You knew Lewis didn't have a problems with the swap because you had all the broadcast information. They have all the broadcast information. They're not the public. They are not the public. They have the information, but they know how to mislead the public by using the narrative. They know what the public gets shown and they know what they get shown. And they just want to hop on bandwagon, go with the narrative that Lewis was angry. It's it's disgusting.
You had to tell the drivers to swap positions, and he wasn't too happy, Lewis Hamilton. I don't know if you've had a word with him.
Not really, because the first call came from Lewis. he proposed to swap, but you have to listen to the full story. Lewis proposed to swap, and then he picked up a little bit the pace, and he swapped, and it's not an issue at all.
So it's a situation that we probably make more dramatic than it was.
Oh, but I'm used to, I'm used to from the beginning of the season. Each time that we are saying white, tons of people are saying black, and when we are saying pink, it's gray. But it is like it is, and I don't want to fight with this. Lewis proposed to swap, and I'm sure that I will have tons of questions about this, but it's a joke.
Well, there you go. And she tried to pretend as well that, oh, so you mean to tell me that we in the public, we're just making it a bit more dramatic than it is? No, 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 no. You know better. You know better. You're not part of the public, by the way. Media personnels, they get way more information than the public. They don't get the normal broadcast. They get like they get to listen to all of the driver conversation. They get the full scoop. Because they're media, they have to get the full scoop. The public, however, we're not media. We're not reporting on anything. Well, I am. That's why I do a little bit of digging. But anyway, the hypocrisy in the sport goes a long way. And like I said, it's a huge bias. And yeah, for people who are denying it, well, here's Ferrari calling it out. But this radio message was not broadcast on the international feed. He was initially told to manage the tires more at high speeds. Then they would swap the car at turn 14, which was not broadcasted either. I will have to admit, it wasn't broadcasted. So ordinary people such as myself didn't know. I had to, if you're using like F1 TV or the F1 app and you're listening to the radio, then you can hear the full conversation. But why didn't they broadcast the most important part? Lewis is the one who suggested, no, they choose the parts where he's out of breath, because Lewis does get out of breath. I don't think he's the only F1 driver. You listen to other drivers, sometimes you hear them, they're a little bit out of breath. They're answering complicated questions. Sometimes they have to think while they're driving. They have to multitask a lot of the time, a lot of cognitive thinking while they're driving tricky cars in tricky conditions. You might think, oh, it's dry. No, it's not tricky condition, really. They can't lock up. How easy it is to lock up a Formula One car or to go wide. You go wide, it costs you 2 seconds. You get overtaken. It's not the kind of sports where mistakes are rewarded, where mistakes are just written off as easy. No, you make a mistake, you lose a position, and you might never gain it back in the entire race. It is very different. It is like in football. If your goalkeeper is not doing, if he's looking away, looking into the crowd, he gets distracted, that's a goal. It cannot be undone. So there are certain things that should be broadcast, but they've been doing this to Lewis for years. I remember even early Mercedes domination days, they would play the worst part of Lewis radio and say, oh, why is he complaining? He's always complaining. You're not listening to the full story. And most of the time, the media, the F1 personnels or the media reporters, they would listen to the full story. They know the full story, that he's having a full conversation. Martin knew the full conversation Lewis was having with his race engineer in Australia, but yet still accused Lewis of being angsty. Why was he so angsty? I don't know, Martin. Maybe it's because he's asking, is there more rain? His engineer is telling him, maybe. We'll see. Maybe not. What kind of answer is that? I would be confused as well. I'd be like, wait, what the fuck do you mean? I would say a lot worse. But when Verstappen does that to his team, no complaints. No complaints from Formula One personnel and media report personnel. That's why I say there's deep racism in the sport. Not just against Lewis. There's deep racism against the sports against Yuki Tsunoda as well. Yuki Tsunoda was fairly new into the sport. He used to swear quite a bit. He's really improved upon it recently, but he wasn't the only driver swearing. And the way they treated Yuki Tsunoda for doing something that other drivers also do, it was bizarre. You had to think there definitely has to be a racial bias here, because they don't treat other drivers this way. Even when other drivers swear, they don't treat them this way. The way they would talk about Yuki Tsunoda, the way they would describe they'd say he's angry. They're all angry, especially when they're losing positions or the race is not going as planned. What's wrong with being angry? That's part of being human. That's part of the human experience. But they only do this to guys like Lewis. They only do this to guys like Yuki Tsunoda. So yeah, I'd have to say there's definitely racism in Formula One. There's definitely a huge amount of racial bias in Formula One. And there you go. Ferrari's calling out the hypocrisy. Ferrari is not saying it's racism, but they're saying it's unfair. They're saying it's what's the word that Ferrari actually use? A joke. They're saying it's a joke. Yeah, they're using kind of words, but I'm going to use the reality. I've seen them doing this to Lewis since the inception especially since the team radio's become so popular. They love to play his radio, but play it out of context. They don't play the important parts. They play the part when he's replying to it to his engineer, and he's a little bit out of breath, and his voice rate rise a little bit, and they say, "Ah, there you go, he's angry. Ah, there you go, he's always complaining." All Formula One drivers complain, all of them, but only Lewis gets blamed for complaining. Guys like Lewis, guys like Sonoda, yeah, deep racism in the sport. Deep racism in the sport. I'll tell you that for sure. So eventually Hamilton was told again to swap the car. He was told specifically by his engineer that we are swapping at turn 14, but he didn't feel Leclerc was close enough. And that's true. Leclerc was like 8 tenths away. That's not a good time to stop. That's not a good time to move aside to let the other go by. You don't want to lose time when you're swapping, especially because Max Verstappen was like 3 seconds or 4 seconds behind them. They can't afford to lose a second or two. So yeah, you need Leclerc to be a little bit faster. The part of Lewis Hamilton radio that did get play is when he basically said, "No, we're not going to swap right now. We will swap at some other time when he's a little bit closer." And that's exactly what happened. Charles eventually got a little bit closer. They eventually swapped. But I tell you for sure. So here's more statements, and I believe this is by Fred Vasseur. And I quote, "This is a joke from FOM because the first call came from Lewis, that Lewis asked us to swap," Fred said. That's true. And yeah, they don't tell the full information. They don't play the full picture. They masquerade it. They change the narrative to make it seem like Lewis is the problem. He's the angry one. He's having the problems with Ferrari as race engineers. He's the one who's angry at them for no apparent reasons. It wasn't angry at all. It was his idea to swap. Public in disbelief. Shock. And the statement went on, I believe this was Fred as well, and I quote, "But to make the show, to create the mess around the situation, they broadcast only the second part of the question. I will discuss with them." Fred said he will discuss that with them. Fred, huge amount of respect for you. Huge amount of respect for you. I never saw anyone in Formula One stood up to the hypocrisy that Lewis faced like this. Fred will say he will speak to them because, yeah, he should speak with them, because it's like, what the fuck were you thinking broadcasting only a one-sided story? You didn't broadcast the full thing. And you know what they're going to say. "Oh, we can write what we want. We can say what we want." That's the media for you. That is the media that has, there's no one there to hold them accountable. There's no consequences when they lie, when they scheme, when they mislead the public. Misleading the public is nothing to joke about. There should be serious reprimand. There should be serious consequences for misleading the public, especially when you're in such a powerful position as media personnel. You basically have a huge control about what people think. Predominantly why I created this channel. When I'm talking about what I'm seeing on the screen. I'm showing you sources. I'm not just talking a lot of, and if I'm saying things, I'm saying it's my opinion. I'm not saying things and then saying this is what happened, this is what didn't happen. Now I'm saying this is my opinion. But when the media is doing their thing, they love to love to mislead it. They love to mislead it. I am telling you, they love to mislead it and drag it on and just to make a show, to honestly make a show. No. I will continue to make videos and show proof. Show what I'm talking about. I'm either showing you the open space on Twitter of the things I'm talking about. I'm telling you if something is my opinion. If there's a source, I want to share the source. Right now, we're getting this source from the race. I am telling you with facts. The media doesn't do that. They're hypocrites. They lack integrity at the most. We leave here with something. FIA block this particular person. My goodness, the FIA love to block people. I tell you that for sure. They love to block people. I imagine they must have blocked thousands by now. Thousands by now. My goodness. Well, they'll have to keep on blocking people. But thank goodness Fred is calling out this bullshit, and he specifically said, "I will discuss with them." Thank you, Fred. Thank you. This has been done to Lewis for so long. Thank you. Someone is standing up. A team is standing up. Fred is standing up. Thank you, Fred. I'm happy with this approach. Article goes on to say there was no hint of ill feeling from Hamilton after the race about swapping positions or strategy call. Even radioed a positive message of encouragement. Fred Vasseur said that the race would have played out the same with the position swap regardless of who suggested it at first, because drivers were willing to become the team player. but said the fact that Lewis did was important. Yeah, Lewis suggesting it, you know, really goes a long way for the team. It really, especially right now where, you know, the team is fucking up, the team is making a few mistakes. Not the best start to the year for Ferrari. 2 terrible race, 1 disqualification, 1 fucked up pit stop in Australia. Yeah, so the team has a lot to do. They also said we have work for the team and to consider the best for Ferrari, said Vasseur. It's agreed between the drivers before the race and it's not an issue. Even the best proof, this is where it came from. Drivers, okay, I'm losing pace and I'm keen to swap. Yeah, these are things that they do talk about in teams. They definitely do talk about these things. But Lewis suggesting it first just made it more straightforward, you know? Just made it not an issue. One driver had pace, the other didn't. Yeah, Lewis is a professional. And he can admit when he's in the wrong. He can admit when he's a little bit slow. And Charles is the faster driver. That's what Ferrari needs right now, a Lewis Hamilton approach. And so thankful that it's happening. Having gone off on tangent, Fred Vasseur finished by saying, now I understand your question and you have to ask the question to Stefano Domenicali, F1 boss, not to me because I'm not in charge of broadcast. See what I mean? You see what I mean? He's saying it. He's saying it for us all to hear. He's not in charge of broadcast, but the people who are not broadcasting the full picture. Honestly, a team collaboration between the two guys is mega. I can't complain a single second about something. The quote also went on to say, you can't imagine the number of questions that I've had about this from the garage when I was here. It's all about the same thing. It's a mess. Is it a mess? No, it's Lewis who asked to swap. I'm not even sure you will have that kind of question. I'm not even sure if you'll have that kind of situation 10 times during the season in other teams. Honestly, from the pit wall, we really appreciate the call from Lewis to say, guys, I'm losing pace. I'm keen to swap. Yeah, Fred, thank goodness for Fred. He's standing up. He is standing up. And look at the comments. So FOEM is doing a drive to survive, basically. It's true. Drive to survive. They mislead. They misdirect. They misinterpret. They do it all for the show. They create a narrative. They create a lie. They do it all for the show. And predominantly, they're lying to predominantly, they are lying to the public. Comments also went on to say, well done to Brundle, though Sky for saying a couple of times that Lewis had initiated it. Don't know what perspective, though, not Sky comes, had it, but it was clear what was going on. If Vasseur not have spoken out, everyone would be accusing Brundle Sky of British bias. They always accuse of British bias. I really don't see the British bias. It was last race, Brundle was accusing Hamilton of God knows what. I don't see the British bias. But thank you all for watching. Hope you understand what I was trying to say in this video. Let me know if you see this as well. Do you remember 2014, 2015, 2016 when the same thing was happening to Lewis? Almost every race, they would play his radios out of context. They wouldn't play the full radio. They'll just choose the worst parts. They'll play it. They'll run with it. They'll write articles, thousands of different narratives, all to farm his name and to make money. Yeah, no integrity and no source to their claims either. Thank you all for watching today, though. I really appreciate it. Subscribe, and I will see you in our next video. Peace.